Hello, this is Matt from tracyandmatt.co.uk and from unboxings.com. Here I have the Vodafone 845, which is a new Android device that is shipping on Vodafone. Going to do a quick unboxing video for you, check it out, and then we'll actually go ahead and do our full review. So let's open up, see what we have inside. So we have warranty terms and conditions, safety information, and the quick start guide. Just take a quick look at the quick start guide. It does literally just cover the first few steps, getting the handset operational and how to personalise. Have the handset itself on top, and we'll come back to that in just a second. Take all the accessories out and we'll take a look at those. Let's go inside. Right, okay, so we have a charger, which is a USB style wall charger. And USB cable, which is a standard USB on one end and a micro USB connector on the other end for obviously syncing and charging. I have a headset, wired headset in fact. So it's got a 4-pole 3.5mm jack on one end, some cable, there is an inline microphone with a single push button, and then the headphones themselves. They're not the worst I've seen, but they're far from being the best, and I would imagine that like most people you're probably going to want to use your own favourite headphones rather than the headphones that come with it. Then we have a 1200 milliamp hour battery, which we're going to install in just a second. Take a quick look at the handset itself. So the Vodafone 845 is manufactured by Huawei for Vodafone, and I think here in the UK at the moment this may be an exclusive. So on the front we have a 2.8-inch display, which is 240 by 320 pixels, and underneath we have a series of physical buttons rather than the touch sensitive buttons that we find typically on other Android handsets at the moment. There are physical buttons, there's 5. So we have answer and hang up buttons, a menu button, a home and back button, and a button in the centre which also does look like it might be optical, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Left hand side has absolutely nothing to see whatsoever. On the bottom we have the 3.5mm headphone connector for obviously headphones or the headset that comes with it. Little hole there is the microphone, and then the micro USB connector for sync and charge on the bottom. On the right hand side we just have an up and down volume control rocker, which seems to be moving them from the left to the right side all of a sudden. So typically they would have been on the left. Now a lot of these devices seem to be having them on the right. I don't know if that's just a trend or if there's a reason for it. On the top we have what looks to be the power button. There's an eyelet here for a phone charm or a lanyard, and then this bit here is actually what allows us to release the back cover, which we'll do in just a second. Just peel off the sticker on the back. So then we have a camera on the back, which is unusually placed kind of low at one end. Typically they're higher up on one end if they are on one end, and then a loudspeaker grill next to it. It's a 3.2 megapixel camera. I'm not sure if it's autofocus or not. I think it might actually be fixed focus, and it does stick out a little bit at the back, so I would expect that lens there, or that protective screen, to become a little scratched, so it might actually reduce the quality of your photos over a period of time as well. So you have to be a bit wary of that perhaps. And there's no flash obviously, as you can see there. So we just remove the back cover, which is reasonably tricky. Pop that off. Fairly plastic, the back cover, but that's kind of typical. SIM card goes in here, and then we have a slot on the side for micro SDHC memory card. According to the spec that I'm looking at here, it will support up to 16 gig micro SDHC memory cards and not 32, unfortunately. But let's just pop the back cover on, snap it back on, and once it's actually on, it's fairly secure. So we'll just power up and wait for it to start up. While it's starting up, let me just run down the spec. It's tri-band for GSM and dual band for HSDPA, so work roaming most countries pretty much. 240 by 320 pixel display, as I say. It is obviously touchscreen, but one thing to be sort of a little bit cautious of is if you're downloading anything from the Android market, not all apps will work on the smaller or lower res display. Many of them are optimized for the 360 640, whereas this is obviously, as I say, 240 by 320. Just be cautious of that. Has built-in 512 meg of ROM and 128 meg of RAM. As I say, up to 16 gig micro SDHC memory cards are supported. Has things like built-in AGPS and Bluetooth 2 with EDR support and Wi-Fi. No secondary camera on the front though. And 1200 milliamp hour battery is apparently good for up to 300 hours of standby time. Android 2.1, which is a pretty good thing to have on what is essentially a fairly budget handset. I still have the screen protector on the front now. I'll leave that for the time being, and we'll see how we get on with that being on when we actually use the touchscreen. According to the spec that I also have here, it's a 512 megahertz processor, not the fastest of processors in an Android handset, but it is a fairly small and, as I say, fairly entry-level handset, so perhaps that's to be expected for it to be that way, rather than sort of a high-end processor. And I guess it's kind of on par with maybe say the HTC Smart in terms of its size and its place in the market, although obviously this one's Android rather than the sort of brew platform of the HTC Smart, or kind of sits in at that sort of price range. So here's where we're loading. Okay, tap the Android to start. Begin. It does appear to be, yes, it's a capacitive touchscreen, not a skip that, not a resistive touchscreen, so that's a very good thing for a start. Enable the data. Yep, we'll allow location and finish. We'll just accept the defaults. Touchscreen calibration. Well, I don't see this very often on Android handsets, having set up quite a few over the last few weeks. I'll just go through this. There we go, we'll run through the calibration process. That's a new one. So as we start up, you can see here already that there's some customization that's taken place, presumably by Vodafone, on the actual home screen. So we have contacts, my web, music, shop and email. Then we have a series of icons along the bottom, which we'll come to in just a moment. You can swipe across, and we have, it's actually not the most sensitive, perhaps just check the screen protector off, be a bit more realistic. So we have something that looks quite similar to HTC's Sense calendar sort of style widget on there, and the calendar and alarm. I must say that the screen isn't the best in terms of colour or clarity. It is a fairly low res display, 240 by 320 pixels, and the red here and the blue here look a little washed out. That colour looks quite good though. And the video widget there. We have 7 screens. I managed to inadvertently press the weather app there. And then we have the power controls, so we can turn off Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, set it into flight mode, sync, and the actual backlight. Toggle the backlight brightness with this. So we'll turn that up. We've got Maps, Google Mail, Google Talk, and Android Market. And then we have what looks to be some sort of notepad. And then the calendar widget itself. Underneath we have a button here to bring up the full list of programs. So in there we have, well, looks to be fairly typical. Facebook's already installed. Doesn't seem to be anything that's terribly out of the ordinary, apart from perhaps the music shop on my web. Google Talks there and YouTube app. All seems fairly standard. And yep, that, as I suspected, is an optical trackpad in the centre of the display there. That's a fairly unusual thing. Not very many Android handsets have that. Normally just touchscreen. There's obviously a couple of HTC devices that have an optical trackpad in the centre. But we'll come back out of there, and we'll go into the menu. We'll go to settings, wireless and networks. We'll turn on Wi-Fi, and we'll set up a Wi-Fi connection. And see what we have available. Connect to that one, and type in the pass key. You can see there we've got the QWERTY keyboard. It's not your typical Android QWERTY. It's slightly different. There's a little dict button there. I think that might be for dictation, so perhaps for voice to text. And if we turn it this way, well, the accelerometer, if there is one, isn't working there. Let me just set up the wireless key. Okay. Wait for that to connect, obtaining an address. Now, whilst typing the pass key in there, the keyboard is a little bit fiddly for me. I have fairly large hands. But I actually think that I'm going to have to revise my earlier statement about the screen, on the touch screen. I think it is, in actual fact, capacitive. Well, not capacitive, it's actually resistive, because it's working with my fingernails rather than the middle of my finger. So it requires a bit of pressure in order to actually make that work. It's struggling to obtain an address here, which is a slight concern, because I'm pretty close to where my Wi-Fi access point is, and well, it's in the same place as I always have it, frankly, and it has connected eventually, but it's in the same place as I always have it when demoing devices, and it did struggle a little bit to connect there. I'm just going to take a look at the browser, see what the browsing experience is. And it's initially going to the Vodafone site. That's obviously been customized into the ROM. And I'm going to actually go somewhere else now. And we'll go to, yeah, it's definitely resistive, not capacitive, but it's fairly sensitive actually, which is perhaps why I didn't realise initially that it wasn't capacitive, because it doesn't require much pressure. But yes, it certainly is resistive, so you could use a little stylus if you wanted to, or you could just use your fingernails as I do. So the page is loading. One thing that we're not going to have then is multi-touch, because you don't have multi-touch on resistive touchscreens, so zooming is going to be done with buttons rather than pinching. So that's loaded reasonably quickly, and obviously we can scroll through the site. It looks reasonably good. The quality of well, the rendering's pretty good, as it's going to be same sort of browser that you have on every Android device now. It's a WebKit style browser, and the colour isn't bad. My earlier comments about the colour of screen perhaps not quite so justified now. I don't actually want to go to another site. Let's go back here. Let's wait for that to reload. Yeah, I mean the colour actually is a lot better, so perhaps the icons on the home screen just actually don't have such great graphics that have been used, because the colours here aren't bad at all really. They're certainly not as good as you're going to find on some of the higher end AMO LED or Super AMO LED displays, but it's pretty decent, and so the touchscreen works quite well if we zoom out. And we can see the full page. It isn't fantastic because obviously we have a fairly low res display as compared to many of the newer Android handsets. There is an accelerometer, so that's obviously rotated there. The accelerometer must perhaps only be supported in certain applications or in certain places, but that works quite well. It does really, the same thing as the browser on pretty much any Android device really. Camera, well, we'll take a look at the camera. If it will launch. Yep. Nothing very interesting here to take pictures of, but let's take a quick shot of the manual. There we go. And we can actually go and look at that back. It's okay. Quality is reasonable. It's not great to see it on that sort of display there. Again, it's fairly low res, but colours look alright. Doesn't look bad at all. We'll just do that. We'll ensure that we actually take some better sample photos when we do the review. Come back out of there, and we'll just try Google Maps. And the icon up in the corner does show that GPS is searching. Let me just zoom in. So obviously indoors, and some handsets do struggle to actually find a GPS signal while I'm indoors. Some are better than others. So it looks as though the Vodafone 845 isn't going to pick up a signal indoors, so we'll just abandon that for now. Go back home. Any other icons or any other apps that we want to take a look at? Well, we'll probably leave these for now, and we'll come back to those when we do the full review. We'll check out some of the other things like YouTube and so on. Actually, it might be worth just looking at YouTube quickly. We'll search. I'll type in. That's interesting. So it's actually changed the fact that I've gone into YouTube. I've now got a T9 style keyboard rather than a QWERTY. So I didn't change anything, it's just how it's come up in here. So it's not multi-touch, it actually is a T9. And let's see if we can actually change the keyboard. Okay, there is a way to do it, and well, you just do a long press on the text box here, change the input method. It was set to touch PAL, changed it back to Android keyboard. Quite why it had changed, or why in here it is different to where we had it a minute ago, but we'll just do a search for Leo D Unboxing. Leo D being my YouTube channel name, and as you can see we've got some things here we could take a look at. So let's pick this Samsung Omnia HD loading movie. Let's see how quickly this actually does come up. Certainly taking a while to load. No, I frankly think I'm going to have to give up, because that's far too long. I mean, it could be down to the connection speed that I've got here. I mentioned in other videos, we live in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, so sometimes our broadband speeds aren't fantastic. So I'm not sure if it's to do with the handset itself or with our broadband speeds. So we'll come back to that. I'll comment on that when it comes to do the full review, and I'll let you know what our experiences are. I suppose the last thing we'd better just take a quick look at is the call log on the dialer. So call log's obviously empty. The dialer looks pretty straightforward and standard. Dialer numbers, got call log, contacts, obviously, which is currently empty, and favourites, all currently empty, obviously, because I just set the handset up. So that's it. That's a very quick tour of the Vodafone 845, which is an Android 2.1 handset. We're going to do a full review for you over the next couple of weeks. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/TracyandMatt for all of our tweets and updates. And I'll be back soon with some more videos and reviews on tracyandmatt.co.uk. But for now, thanks for watching.
Bitdefender is dedicated to protecting people's digital lives, so working with unboxings.com to help preview and review the latest technology is a perfect fit.